Here are some essential bass guitar patterns that you must know. We'll start off with a very simple one, and that's a minor triad. Since we'll be using these fretboard diagrams throughout, I'll quickly explain them. So we have the R, that's the root note, and that's on the 5th fret of the E string. So the horizontal lines are the strings and the vertical are the frets. Then sometimes we have different notations. Inside you've got that B3, that's a flat 3, then P5, that's a perfect 5th. Don't worry too much about that. Those are intervals, very useful to know and to describe what we're playing, and musicians use it all the time. That's what makes up an A minor triad. These shapes are also movable, so wherever you have any note on the E, A or D strings, you can move that exact pattern around. So that would be A flat minor triad, because I'm playing on an A flat on the D string. That's the 6th fret. So they're very handy. So there we have an A minor triad. I've got some exercises here that you can play along to a backing track, but also as we go I'm going to show you how to use these as well. So here we have A minor, G minor and 2 bars of D minor. Very simple. I'm not really creating anything with it yet, but just this exercise here. See how the pattern is the same on each different chord, because they're all minor triads. These are building blocks of bass lines. Let's hear what it sounds like with the backing track. I've gone rock for this example, and really that doesn't sound like a bass line, but you can hear that it fits, right? If I was to play a bass line over this, I can use any of those notes when I move to the different chords, or maybe something more appropriate, like probably just the root note. That sounded a bit more like it. I was just using root notes mostly. And then sometimes using notes from the triad. And altering the, where I play them. And at the end I couldn't resist putting in something melodic like that. That's actually the key of this piece of music. It's in D minor, but I'm not going to get ahead of myself. That's coming later. Let's move on to major triads. So here we have C major triad. You can see it's very similar to a minor shape. The root and the 5th are in the same position, but the 3rd has changed. That's the difference between a major and a minor triad, is the minor triad is down 1 fret from the major. There is also more than one way to play a triad, but I'm just going with one shape for this lesson just to keep it simple. But broadly speaking, you should be able to play any triad with 3 fingers. If I go back to the minor example on A, first finger, second finger, all these notes are A, C and E. I'm just covered wherever I am on the bass. For this lesson I'm going to keep it simple and one pattern. So here we have D minor again, C on the 8th fret now of the E string, B flat 2 bars, a little M after a letter means minor, so we've got D minor. No letter after the root note means just major, so C major to B flat major. The second time round I did the same thing as before, which was to make it more musical. Now I'm giving you all these backing tracks for free, and by the way, in return, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. Practice to your heart's content with these. This is sort of a patterns lesson, so do be boring first and just play the triad over each chord. So D minor, then C, then B flat. Just to see that it fits, just to get your fingers used to this. And then it's all about creating, because that's how we turn this mundane pattern. Someone wrote a comment about, how do I make, you know, these mundane patterns into music? And well, this is how. You don't use them religiously. You treat them as options. So I'm using just the root and then going to the flat third there on the D minor. Jumping to that C. Root 5 there. We'll come on to that in more detail later, but that always sounds good. In fact, why don't I show you now? So we're in the key of F major here. That's 1 B flat, just means F major. Now F major has a related minor key, which is D minor. Here are the notes here. What that means is that they share the same notes. If I start down here on F and just play F, G, A, B flat, that's the key signature. I have to do a B flat. Otherwise, all natural notes. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. That's F major. D minor is just D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D. That's what it means to be related. They have the same notes. So here, in this example here, we've got another really useful pattern, which is a D minor 7 arpeggio. You can add the octave in as well. That's what we're doing in the exercise here. We've got this. Then we have F major 7, so we start at the first fret of the E string. There we have the root note, the major third to the 5th, and then the major 7th. And that's the 7th note of the major scale. And it gives you quite a sophisticated sound. Let's try it out. Again, using that root note approach, I moved that pattern. By the way, that's got an open string in it, this pattern here. But it really is just the same as playing the closed position where you don't have an open string. And it really is all about knowing the pattern really well, number one, and being aware of the interval structure. Root, 5, octave. That's really easy to learn. After a while, you'll get that. And then you just know, all right, right down here, that's a major third. Know that a minor third would be 1 fret lower. And there's that major 7th. It's right next door to the octave. If all that sounded like nonsense to you, a different language, which it is, then perhaps you might consider my theory course. I've got that, little plug for that. I'll put that in the link below. That will explain everything, but I've got other lessons as well that explain it. It's not that difficult, actually, once you get that down. Then you listen to the sound of it, you learn the shape, and it all comes together. I love that sound, the sound of a major 7th to an octave. It's really cool. Here's a 2-5-1 progression, more commonly associated with jazz, but I've shoehorned it into this style. So we have a G minor 7. We can use exactly the same pattern that we just learnt in the previous example. Then we have a newish one here. This is C dominant 7th. And then F major 7. So playing the exercise just without the backing track, it would be this. notice I played the C7 here to begin with. But here I played it down on the 3rd fret. And that's what I love about bass. That's a pattern that you can move to any C and it will just always conform, and the same notes will be there. The root, major 3rd to 5th. That's the flat 7th, and then the octave. Okay. I'm going to show you a slightly less basic, more advanced pattern just in a minute, but let's play to the backing track now. Just at the end there, I just settled on triads, simplified it. That's often the best way in a bass line. Chip away, the notes. Don't play as many notes, and suddenly you have a quite good sounding bass line. A G minor triad, a C major triad, F just roots. You can use some of the notes from the arpeggio to create a fill. So it E, F, E, that's that major 7th to octave, to the 5th, to the root. I know these patterns really off by heart. I'm governed at this point more by my ear than I am by my fingers knowing patterns. But patterns are a good way to make sense of the bass, I think. Here's a really cool thing you can do. Add a flat 3rd in. So you get that down there, and that up there. Even add in more notes. You could add in a chromatic movement just from the flat 7 to the octave. You've heard that loads of times, right? Even filling in the gaps there between the 3rd and the 5th. There are so many things you can do with this. That's just a slightly more intricate pattern over a basic pattern of a dominant 7th. If you fill in the gaps, add in some, I've learned so many bass lines that do this. That I just know that now, and hopefully you do now, that a flat 3rd to a major 3rd just sounds good. Also, when I hear that without my bass anywhere to be seen, I know it's that, and that's from learning patterns. Let's actually simplify things further with this pattern. So we have root 5 octave. You can also get the 5 down there. Let's use the 2nd backing track and use those patterns. It just fits really well. Now there when I was playing, I wanted to do something different. And that's where these couple of final shapes can come in. So we have, don't forget the fact that we're in the key of D minor here. That's D natural minor. That's where all these things are coming from. The 1st, 3rd, and 5th of those notes is that triad. At the flat 7, you have minor 7 arpeggio, which is very close to a minor pentatonic scale. All of these can be used together. And that's where I think we get some really cool bassline opportunities. I can use a fill using that flat minor pentatonic. It always works. I added a flat 5. That's your blues scale. You need to know all these. Or you could do this. That was just using the D natural minor scale. Using all of these in conjunction. I have a sample riff here which you can learn and then just make your own things up based around this. Here it is. I'm just making up a riff which is just a repeating pattern using just those notes, quite a lot of gaps and rests. And you just repeat those notes. You can create anything from that and it will sound good. That's a very common sound, that. As is this. This is the F major pentatonic. If I keep it simple to start with, F, G, A, C, D. That's a really good shape. I love that. That's just an F major pentatonic. Expand it to the next octave. You've suddenly got quite a lot of notes to play around with. Add this note in here. We have another bluesy sound. Now, take that set of shapes and the D minor, and you've got lots to play around with. I'm going to go back to backing track number 3, just that chord progression, D minor 7, 2 bars, F major 7, 2 bars, and just use exclusively these shapes now. Within that, you have your triads. You have lots of things that you can play. Let's have a go. For me, I felt those last 2 patterns gave me enough information to make up quite a cool bass line around that. I think sometimes I get this quite a lot. Some people sometimes say, oh, the roots and the fifths and maybe the thirds, it's a bit too simple. What other options do I have? Well, this kind of thing. You've got those minor pentatonic shapes. You've got the notes from the entire key. And of course, you need to know them not just in the one shape I've given you. You need to know it across the fretboard. I think that's going to give you a lot of mileage, just those shapes there. Download the PDFs, learn each individual shape and move it around into all kinds of different keys. If someone were to say to you, D flat minor, you should be able to know where the note is and go there quickly. If you don't, I'll put a lesson right here about how to learn all the notes on your fretboard. And then you'll have a minor triad, a major triad, a dominant 7th triad, a major pentatonic, a minor pentatonic. Just some really, really useful things to be getting you started, more than started. Have a go playing along to these backing tracks, and if you have any follow-up questions, let me know. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you on the next lesson.